In this lesson, we're gonna see how to emit smoke while the helicopter is landing on the ground. So let's get started. Open the scene called helicopter vertical landing start. And if I come here and play the animation, you'll notice it's a simple animation and the helicopter landing on the ground. So let's first hide this curve by going to show and let's click on NURBS curves, okay, to hide that. Okay, so now let's create the emitter on the ground. So I'm gonna click on disk to create the disk, and then I'm going to scale it about 46. And now let's go to FX tab and let's go to Fluids and let's click on 3D container. And let's scale it a little bit and move it up just under the emitter, okay? And now let's select the emitter and let's shift and select the fluid container and let's go to fluids and let's go to add and let's click on emit from object option box and let's reset the settings. Make sure the emitter type is surface and let's hit apply and let's hit play. As you see, nothing crazy happening, just the emitter emits some smoke. Let's select the container and let's go to attribute editor. And let's increase the base resolution to 30. And I'm going to constrain the negative Y ground for the fluid. So let's set that to negative Y side. And let's set that to none and none. And now let's go down to auto resize and let's click on auto resize and click on resize closed boundary. Now the ground is constrained. And let's hit play. Okay, and let's go to emitter and let's scroll down here to the basic emitter attributes and I'm going to set that to 0 and I want the emitter starts at 0 and then gradually emitting more smoke. So let's set a key here and let's go to frame 90. By the way, you can disable the evaluation in order to scroll freely here, okay? And 90 and let's set that to 4. The reason I am not setting higher values because the scene is too big. So you need to be careful about that. 4 is enough for that. So now you see the emitter gradually emitting smoke in the viewport. Let's scroll down and let's set the fluid drop off to 0. And I'm gonna change some attributes here in the fluid emission turbulence. I want to set the turbulence to 9. I am not guessing these values because I tried that before. And you see we have some turbulence on the emitter. I think it's pretty good. Now let's select the fluid container and I want to rotate the fluid around the y-axis. So let's go to fields and solver and I'm gonna choose vortex and let's go to volume control attributes and I want to change that to cylinder and let's scale it something like that and I want to change the magnitude to 150 and the attenuation I think 0.1 it's pretty good and let's hit play and see. And you'll notice now the fluid is rotating around the y-axis. Okay, great. And you'll notice it's pretty good. So the helicopter is landing and the smoke gradually emitted from the emitter. Let's add another turbulence field. So let's select the fluid and let's go to fields and solvers and let's add a turbulence and let's increase the magnitude about 20 and I want to set the attenuation to 0 because I want the turbulence affect all the scene. So now we have another level of turbulence beside the turbulence of the fluid itself. Another thing I want to do now, I want to push the fluid from the center. So I'm gonna select the fluid, and then I'm going to fields and solvers, and now I'm going to choose volume axis. So this will push the fluid in these directions. Okay, so let's scale that. And now you notice the volume axis is cube. The problem with the cube, this will push the fluid in all directions. I want to push it just in these directions. Okay, so let's go back to volume control attributes, and I'm going to change that to cylinder, and let's move it up a little bit, and let's scale it a little bit more. I think that's pretty good. And let's go to magnitude, and I want to change that to about 400. It's good value. And I want to change the attenuation to 0.4. So now let's go to Encache, and let's tear that off and set it there. And let's click on Maya Fluid option box, and let's set a name for the cache, helicopter cache version 01, and let's click create. Sorry, we need to select the fluid, so let's go back again and click create. Okay, the cache is finished, and it took about 5 minutes. So I think the volume axis field is not pushing the fluids too much. So I want to change some attributes in the volume axis fields. So I'm going to away from axis, and I want to change that to 10 to push it more. And I want to change the turbulence to about 0.2. It's good value. And I think that's all what I need. So let's cache it again. And let's hit replace, and let's hit replace existing. Okay, the cache is finished, and it took about 20 minutes. So let's scroll and see, and the result is pretty good, and I am happy with that. So now let's select the fluid, and let's go to shading. And here you can increase the transparency if you want to, or decrease or increase that. And I'm going to change the color to brown, something like that. Okay, and I can decrease the transparency. And let's go now to lighting, and let's click on self shadow, and I want to set the shadow opacity to 3, or you can set it to 4 to add more shadow on the smoke. And I think I'm going to change the ambient brightness a little bit to add a little brightness to it. And let's see. I think the result is pretty good. Let's hide the fields. Okay, and let's hide the emitter too. And let's hide the grid. And now let's create a play blast for that. Let's right click here and play blast option box. And I'm going to set that to QuickTime PNG and save to file. And let's save it to test version 01. And let's hit play and see. Okay, the play blast is finished, and we get really good result. If you want to add more details, you can increase the resolution a little bit more to 40 or 50 too. But the result is really good. So if you have any questions, ask me in the discussions. So that's it for this lesson, and I hope you enjoyed. See you in the next lesson.